Chapter 11. Oh, wow, it is amazing, Gwendolyn. You are brilliant. Sally stood in front of the cracked old mirror in the wardrobe department, transfixed by her experience. She was staring at a sparkly, sexy drum marionette dressed in black fishnets with patent leather boots to the knee, short gold hot pants, a sequin tunic with gold tasseled epaulets, and all topped off with a peaked helmet with a huge black feather. She turned and gave Gwendolyn a hug. I can't thank you enough. This has just made everything possible. I will perform to the costume now, don't you see? I can't let you down after all this. Gwendolyn was recovering from the hug but managed a weak smile. Well, I am certainly glad to be of assistance, and I must say, it does make a change to be appreciated. Now, if you excuse me, I must get on as I have to sew pom-poms on 12 pair of outfits. Sally went in search of Mr. Tibbs from Freeman Hardy and Wills, who were waiting in the foyer with Tommy, the photographer, to have his photo taken for posterity. Oh, I say, said the shoe shop manager on seeing Sally's outfit. That is certainly eye-catching, Miss Thomas. You look splendid, and the boots finish it all off a treat. Tommy set up the photo with Sally seated, with acres of leg and thigh on display, while Mr. Tibbs knelt at her feet, adjusting the zipper and smiling at the camera. Great shot, great shot. Lift your leg a bit more, Sally. This last request was met with a black look from Sally, who had enough of being exploited for one day. Okay, no problem, added Tommy quickly. I have got the shot. Thank you very much, Mr. Tibb. This will be in the Chronicle on Wednesday, and I will try to get it in the Manchester Evening News as well. Much appreciated, Mr. Nuttall. Thank you, Miss Thomas, for all your help, and my wife and I look forward to the opening night. Give us a wave, won't you? He winked and was gone. Well, there goes a happy customer, said Tommy, packing up his equipment. Well done, girl. And that was a result all around. Keep it up, and you and I will have a few bob. Sally laughed. You mean you will? Still, it has been a good result, I must say. The boots really make the outfit. I will certainly keep in touch, Tommy, and thank you. Now I must fly, or I will get the sack. See you later. Backstage was becoming 24-hour hive of activity. It was as if the theatre had been asleep for months, and now the light had been switched on, and every nook and cranny was lit up. Sally imagined it like a doll's house. As she pulled open the front, she could see every room in the place, and each room there was a story unfolding, with each of the characters creating their own dramas within their elected space. The cast hardly left the theatre for the next week, so they all retreated to the dressing rooms. Heather and Sally had spent a morning allocating dressing rooms and checking lights, plumbing, radiators, and electric fan. There was so much rubbish piled behind curtains and cupboards. Dust and grime curled around every knob and knocker. I just can't understand why Giles never spends any money on getting all this sorted, sighed Heather, trying in vain to apply a spanner to a radiator tap. It's classic, isn't it? They spent thousands doing up the front of house and gilded the really, but completely abandoned the real heart of the place and the people who work here. I can't get this bloody thing to turn. Do us a favour, can you? Go and ask Gladys at the stage door if her Ronnie could come in and repair this, and maybe her daughter Cheryl might like to come and clean for a couple of hours with a mate and earn a few bob. I can probably fiddle it from petty cash, and then at least there will be some semblance of organised chaos, and Peggy and Percy will shut up for 5 minutes. Have you been in their room lately? It is a real home from home. Sally set off to find Gladys, and then decided to pay Peggy a visit. The door to the dressing room was shut, and as Sally went to knock, she noticed the brightly polished brass number I nailed in the centre of the door. Enter, Peggy invited the caller in. Hello, darling. How is it going? Would you like a cup and a biscuit? I bet you haven't had time to spend a penny, never mind drink a cup of tea. That's showbiz, my dear. While Peggy got out cups and saucers, Sally had a chance to take in the room. It was like a grotto in a circus or a carnival. Every inch of space was filled with stuff, from the beaded trim round the ceiling light to the fairy lights around the mirror lights. Everywhere twinkled. Goodness knows what the electrician would have to say about the safety aspect. In front of the dressing table, lights and mirror were on elaborate hand-embroidered mat covering all the tatty and chipped paintwork of the wooden dressing table. Laid out in neat rows were sticks of makeup, all of them in the original gold and black paper, carefully folded down as the grease paint was used. At drama school, the students had been given a couple of lessons in stage makeup, and Sally had bought the obligatory sticks of 5 and 9 from Fox at Covent Garden. which was the famous makeup supplied to the theatre. 5 and 9 were sticks of grease paint which, when applied together, formed a base for the face. It was thick and gluttonous, and looked terribly close up, but from a distance under the lights gave the face a reasonable colour and skin quality. There were hundreds of variations of colour, and depending on the kind of parts one got to play, the quantity of sticks required would vary. However, for the Julian lead, there was really just the basic 5 and 9 plus a carmine stick which doubled as lipstick and rouge, and as Sally discovered from Peggy, provided the dot in the corner of the eye. "What is that?" Sally had asked one evening when she was delivering groceries to the dressing room. "This, dear girl, is called definition. When one is playing to the gods, it is vital that they see one's eyes, and this creates a point of reference." Sally watched transfixed as Peggy applied the bright red dot to each eye. This was followed by a thick black line across the eyelid, finishing a tick at the end of the eye. Greens and blues had been applied in sweeping strokes to the eyelid, each brushstroke reaching for the outer corner of the eyebrow with alarming insistence, and joining the thick black eyebrow in its final quest to hit the hairline. Uplift was an understatement, thought Sally. The result was 2 huge orbs of multicolored delight. If they didn't see that in the upper circle, they must be blind indeed. Over the next few months, Sally came to appreciate that in terms of makeup, Peggy's routine was unchanging, and resulted in all her performance bearing the same basic look, that of an aging Cleopatra. It worked fine for most of the time, but then she came to play Sir Thomas More's wife in A Man for All Seasons. It was down to Percy to quietly take her aside and suggest that she wipe it off immediately. To her credit, she did as she was told, all but for the red dots. Some things would never change. "Here's your tea, love." Peggy broke through Sally's flaws, and she took the cup. "Gosh, Peggy, this room is miraculous. You've completely transformed it. Do you do this wherever you go?" "Oh, do what, darling?" asked Peggy, sitting down in front of her mirrors. "Well, bring all this stuff with you. I mean, you must have so much to haul around you all the time." "Oh, I couldn't travel without my things. This is my life, darling. You will soon come to realize that an actress' dressing room is her real home. This is my sanctuary. As long as I am surrounded by my bits and pieces, I feel safe. Percy is the same. Have you seen his room?" Peggy got up and made towards the door which led to the adjacent dressing room. When Sally had first been going round with Heather Sorting's room, she had commented on the fact that these 2 rooms were connected. "Surely Peggy and Perky don't like this arrangement much, do they?" she had questioned. "Ah, well, hereby hangs a tale," replied Heather. "These 2 rooms were originally just dressing rooms, number 1. In the old days, the leading actors were often also the actual manager of the theatre and the company, so he had the big plush room. Apparently there was one season where the 2 leading actors both thought they were entitled to dressing room number 1, and it got so heated that a compromise had to be found, so they split this into 2 and put the actor's name on the door rather than the numbers. Everyone was happy." Sally watched Peggy now. She moved to open the connecting door. What did Percy make of that, she wondered. "Actually, maybe we had better not intrude into his room while he's not there." Peggy stopped suddenly and turned back to Sally. She looked sheepish. "I mean, here's me going on about an actor's dressing room being his sanctuary, and I am about to invade the privacy of a fellow artiste. No, you will have to wait and ask Percy yourself to show you his bits." Peggy returned and took up her place again in front of the mirror. "Now, where were we? Oh, yes, my things. Well, as you can see, I have collected them all over the place. Those little bells hanging over the lampshade came from China, you know. I had a dear friend who sent them to me. All the ornaments have a meaning. Mostly they are first night presents given to me for luck. So naturally one would never get rid of them. It is a wonderful feeling to come into the theatre of an evening and wipe away the outside world. I am always in at least 2 hours before a show, and will spend my time just pottering, you know. If I have been out during the day to lunch or the cinema or something, I have to clear my head of all these events and just breathe in the atmosphere in my room, the makeup, the candles, and the costume. It makes me feel secure. Life is so full of insecurities, don't you think? Things we can't control, people we don't understand. Well, here in my world, I am secure and safe and in control." Peggy looked through the mirror at Sally, sitting behind her, and smiled a little sadly. "Don't mind me, darling. Just a silly old actress doing her thing." "Don't be silly," said Sally, who was genuinely moved. "I find it all really interesting. I have so much to learn. Yet, thanks for the tea, Peggy. I will leave you in peace now and go and find Percy, because Giles wants you both for the last scene. Will you be down in 5? Of course, and tell that Sarah to make sure my prop chair is placed stage right. She got it wrong this afternoon and I couldn't find it. Threw my scene completely, and then she had the nerve to give me a note. Bit above herself, that one. I might say I'll have to make sure she knows her place. Sally left before she got embroiled in backstage diplomacy. So far she had managed to keep her nose clean. Chapter 12. The run up to the first night was like a roller coaster gathering pace as it reached the top of the incline and hung there for a few seconds before dramatically plunging down again. The cast ate during their slept their allotted parts. Giles finally pulled them all together, casting his magic from the front of the royal circle always spring from the box. He seemed to feed them all energy. Sally could no longer feel her feet as she stomped out the beat with the rest of the cast for the finale. Every bone in her body was crying out for release from the pain of spending 18 hours on her feet. On the Sunday night, when the technical rehearsal was threatening to go on until the early hours, secure came from an unexpected source. About midnight, Miss Wong from the Chinese takeaway next door appeared at the side of the stage with a huge box of food. Delicious aromas were wafting across the stage, and everyone was transfixed by the thought of sweet and sour pork balls. Who dares to interrupt my rehearsal? Bellowed Giles from the auditorium. But Miss Wong was not cowed. Mr. Giles, you terrible man, make all work too hard. Mrs. Wong brings food and all will go better. Come, come, everyone, eat now. Mr. Giles, you come too and take a break. The cast let out a spontaneous cheer and fell upon the food, cheering off the floor and stuffing their mouths. Oh my God, this is so good, mumbled Sally through a spoonful of chicken in black bean sauce. It was the turning point of the night, and Miss Wong became the heroine of the hour. For the rest of the season, the cast would turn to her sweet and sour sauce and chunky chips for inspiration. It became the one constant in the schedule, technical rehearsal and Mrs. Wong's takeaway. They finished the run at around 3 o'clock in the morning. Jenny and Pete and Sally staggered up the hill to the house and fell into bed. Next morning came round in a flash, and they all appeared in the kitchen, bleary-eyed but ready for the next onslaught. Pete had cooked them a huge, full English since Jenny, efficiently as ever, had cunningly found the time to stock the fridge for such occasion. This will probably be the last thing we eat today, she warned them. Sally felt guilty that herself was so behind in organising things in real life. For the last week, all she could think about was a show. How would she survive when she moved to her flat? And what on earth would Lord Dora make of it all? The three of them gathered everything they needed for the rest of the day and set off for the theatre. The dress rehearsal was scheduled to start at 2, but Sally had so much to do before she could even start thinking about her own performance. Heather was waiting for her at the stage door. Listen, she said, before you get stuck in here, can you whip down to Woolworths and buy some balloons and those party popper things? Bloody Giles has decided he wants the cast to set them all off at the end of the show. Here's some pretty petty cash. I hope it's enough. Sally dumped her stuff with Gladys and set off. She practiced her numbers as she sped along the road until she caught the eye of some youth hanging out on the corner of the street, pointing at her and laughing and hollering along with her. Oh well, so they thought she was potty. Who cares? Who cared? When she got back to the theatre, there was a traffic jam at the stage door, as the band appeared to have arrived. Frank, George, Terry and Giles, double bass, trumpet, piano and drums, all alone from Crewe's very prestigious brass band. Hi, can I help at all? She asked. Frank Masters at your service, said a tall, jolly man with a fine head of hair, extended his hand from behind his double bass. Sally Thomas, said Sally, taking his hand. Pleased to meet you. Shall I show you to the band room? Frank laughed. Oh, I think we know the way there by now, don't we, lads? This is our 10th year playing for this lot. Oh, sorry, how stupid of me, apologised Sally, feeling very foolish. I'm the new girl, of course, but let me help you at least and organise some tea or coffee. Don't you mither yourself, my girl. We are fine. You get on and we will see you in the pub later. Frank managed to make a space for Sally to squeeze past. She went straight to the props corner and presented Heather with her purchases. Well done. Now you can make sure that everyone has their opening costumes and that all their props were checked on the prop tables. Other side, please. I'll be calling the half in 5 minutes. God help us. The half was called 25 minutes before the curtain up, and it was legally binding that every member of the cast be in the theatre then when it was called. This allowed stage management to keep tags on anything untowards or any latecomers. The biggest problem would be no show from an actor, so the understudy would have to be informed and dressed and ready to go. If the actor arrived after the half had been called, he would still not be allowed on. It was down to the understudy. 5 minutes. Sally rushed to complete her task. She was desperate to get her dressing room and practice a little with her makeup. She took the stairs to the top of the theatre 2 at a time. That would have to be her warm-up for the show. She was sharing one of the dressing rooms with Sarah. It was usually reserved for the chorus, so it was slightly larger, with several dressing tables and a couple of basins in the corner. The boys were next door in an identical room. Needless to say, though, theirs was a hell of a mess. The boys had hung a makeshift clothesline across the room, from which hung a huge variety of underwear, some cleaner than others. Odd socks and shoes lay where they had been chucked in the corner. Smelly trainers and old footballs and soggy towels lay in piles, and books and magazines were scattered all over the floor. It was horrible to see. Not my problem, thought Sally as she passed the ever-open door and moved to her own dressing room. There had been no time to personalise it at all, so everything was rather cold and pristine. Sarah had managed to put up a couple of posters, her end of the dressing table, and laid out her makeup and towel. But poor old Sally's end was decidedly bare. Oh well, time enough for all that later. She had picked up her opening costume on the way up and hung it carefully on the rail, then quickly unpacked her bags of goodies. She sat down in front of the mirror and finally drew breath. The face that stared back at her through the rather grubby glass was wide-eyed and pale. She had bags under her eyes for the first time in her life, and her hair needed washing. Was this an actress in the making? Too bloody right it was. She had 15 minutes to get ready. She stuck her head under the tap in the basin and pinched some of Sarah's shampoo. The water was cold but did the job. She had actually bought herself a little hairdryer, so she had tapped her wet locks with vigour for 5 minutes and then stuck it up in a roll ready for the nifty hat. She then whacked on the 5 and 9 and a good dollop of scarlet on the cheeks. But no time for the red dots this show. She gave her lips a good outline though, with the old lipstick and some awful gloss stuff she had been on offer in Woolies. It tasted disgusting, and then when she smiled, she said it smeared all over her front teeth. Not a good look. She started to haul herself into her black fishnets as the tannoy over the dressing room door suddenly crackled into life, making her jump. 5 minutes to curtain up, ladies and gentlemen. 5 minutes, please. Could Miss Thomas come to the prompt corner immediately, please? Oh shit. Sally swore she got her boot zip stuck. I'm not ready to be ready. Am I not going to be ready? But she managed it. Took a quick look in the mirror and was amazed how a bit of theoretical makeup and sparkle had transformed her from tired ASM to cheeky drum marrow and sped down the stairs. She made the prompt corner just as Heather was calling beginners. Well done, girls, you look great. Now just make sure they all line up in the right order and stand up to raise the third curtain, please. Crew was still waiting for its automated tabs curtains, so they had to be raised by hand on pulleys. Sally assumed the position and was ready to haul away, much to the delight of the boys, who were all lined up behind her ready to go on, and had the perfect view of her fishnets. As she raised her arms to pull the curtain, her rather short tunic was beyond the realms of decency. Oh, shut up, you losers, she hissed, and then got an attack of the giggles. Suddenly there was only bright lights and the sound of the drums beating out the entrance, and they were off and running. Well, nearly. Stop, hold the tabs. We have a problem with the follow spot, Giles was screaming from the centre of the circle. Go back and rest and reset and start again. Unfortunately, dress rehearsal are notoriously fraught with danger. The old adage, bad dress rehearsal, great show, is always their here to cling to, pray to. They managed to get through the whole show just about intact, but it was now nearly 6:30 and the show was to open at 7:30. The cast was gathered in the store for their notes. Some had managed to grab a cup of tea or an apple just to keep them going. Giles gave each actor their notes, ticking them off his pad theoretically with a grand gesture of his pen. Well, it is the usual kick, bollock and scramble, he said, but the basic show is there, and we're going to get out there tonight and sell it as 150%. We want our audience to come back again and again. So I know you are tired and hungry, but this is it, guys. This is why we do it, and we are going to do it well. Good luck, and see you upstairs in the bar afterwards for a glass of bubbly. They all clapped and hugged each other and suddenly disappeared. Sally was just clearing final pieces of paper from the stage and was aware of the silence in the auditorium. It was as though the theatre had taken a deep breath and was waiting. She could almost hear the walls whispering with all the voices from so many shows over so many years. The air was filled with hidden energy, waiting for the spark to ignite the show. It was a bit like being in a church. She tiptoed off the stage, not wanting to disturb the setting before it was time. As she made her way upstairs to the dressing room, she was reminded of her impression that the theatre was like a doll's house. If she opened any of the doors now, as she passed, there would be a slice of life taking place, an action, a word, all in miniature, captured behind those doors. The sound of laughter, a high note soaring out. Someone gargled, a thumping of feet on the floor, followed by a cheer. Every corner of the building was alive and throbbing with anticipation. Then suddenly it was released. The band played out, and Sally felt the thrill of hearing the pure chords of a live trumpet against the beat of a drum. The audience started to clap along with the band. Then, as quickly as the crowd was cheering, they went quiet, hushed as the lights went down, and the huge embroidered curtains rose above the stage with a swish. Momentary blackness, then white light bursting in. Onto the stage as the cast seemed to spring from the wings in their bright Pierrot costumes, singing, "Oh, it's a lovely war." The 2 hours went past like a shot, and suddenly it was over. The cast was all standing in a row in front of the footlights, taking their bow to an ecstatic audience who were on their feet, and the balloons were floating above them, and the poppers were popping. Sally thought she would burst with happiness. Nothing in her drama training had prepared her for this. She waved at Mr. and Mrs. Tibbs and hugged Charmaine, who was standing next to her. "Isn't this fantastic?" she shouted above the cheering to her rather bemused Charmaine. "Well, it's certainly different from the Royal Shakespeare Company," replied the actress. Once the curtain was drawn, after several encores, the cast tore back to their rooms and whipped off the makeup and costume and made their way to the bar. They had been promised champagne, which had been a bit misleading on Giles' part, but there were free beer and a glass of warm white wine. No one cared, it was alcoholic, and there were even some sausage rolls and crisps. The cast sipped a bit and chatted to the local dignitaries. Sally got stuck with Mr. and Mrs. Tibbs for a while, but when that moved on to the mayor, who was very chatty. "Wonderful show, Miss Thomas, and your number was a triumph. What a costume, eh?" He almost did a nod, wink, wink routine, but a pat on the arm from his wife silenced him. The cast slowly began to withdraw, as was usually the way. The actors needed the space to come down from the high. Word spread round the room that it was all back to Janine and Pete for the sum of Mrs. Wong's chips and sweet and sour sauce, and bring a bottle if you had one. The pub was closing in 5 minutes, so suddenly the theatre bar was empty, save for a few remaining program sellers and bar staff. Sally had actually managed to remember to buy a bottle on her way in that day, so she set off home with Simon and Jeremy, who were in charge of the chips. They sang all the way home and fell into the front room in a pile of hysteria. The little terrace house shook and shivered for a good 2 hours, until the inhabitants could stay awake no longer. There was not a spare inch on the floor that was not inhabited by a body. Had anyone wrenched to open the door, they would have been knocked back by the pungent odours of stale beer, sweet and sour sauce, and grease paint. But the door was covered with smiles. Thanks for listening.